So this is, I screenshot the two. These are in your general, like the packet on Canvas that's underneath the AP information. These are the 4 units that the goal is to cover this year. The first 3 will be on your AP test. So if you look in here, like a lot of these things you've seen before, which is good, but a lot of them you haven't, and a lot of them are not even in your book, like I said yesterday. Change in tandem is not really in your book, which is like the first section from the AP list. Rates of change, not really in your book. So we're going to supplement that stuff. We're going to do that once we're going to go midway through chapter 1, and then we're going to start to pull in some of this content, okay? So we're not going to start here, but we'll eventually cover all of sections or units 1, 2, and 3. You've seen things like rational functions and asymptotes. You've seen things like end behavior. Is it falling left, rising right? That stuff you've seen. Finding the zeros of a function. You've seen complex zeros, those i's, all that stuff's going to come back, okay? Transformations of functions. Does it shift right, down, left, up, right, left, up, down, that kind of stuff. Those will be there. Logs, exponential functions, all that stuff you at least got exposure to last year. Obviously, it's going to be brought back in again. But the good news is a lot of it you've seen. Did we get to arithmetic and geometric last year? No, we did not, right? You don't know what I'm talking about. That means we did not. And then unit 3 is like your sine cosine curves. So the graphs of those curves that go like in waves will come back. And then all the things relating to unit circle. And we're going to end up with like polar coordinates, which is not something that you've seen before. The unit 4 is something that for prep for next year, we're going to do some of this. I don't know that we'll get to all of this, but we'll do some of it so that you know what a vector is, so that you know what a matrices is and how to use them. Notice that like conics are in here. That's your parabolas, ellipses, hyperbolas. So that stuff we won't cover during the normal year because it's not on your test, but we will revisit it again at the end of the year. So these are things you have to look forward to, okay, or to dread, depending on how you feel about it. But this is basically a very loose plan for the year. At the top, it also says how much the weight of the exam comes from that section. So if you notice that unit 1, 30 to 40% of your overall exam comes from unit 1. 27 to 40% is going to come from unit 2, and 30 to 35% is going to come from unit 3. So it's a pretty even split between those topics. One has, 14 topics, like 1.1, 1.2. So it's going to feel like we're in unit 1 forever, okay? So don't freak out. You're not going to be tested at the end of that on all of that only. You're going to get a break. We're going to pause somewhere in the middle, we'll test. We'll pause somewhere again, we'll test. And then when we get you ready to actually prep for your test, you're going to start to get the cumulative stuff, okay? But you're not going to it's going to feel like we're in unit 1 for a long time. If you look at the top, it says suggested 6 to 8 weeks. That's like the whole first quarter, okay? So that's just like an overview of the content that we will be getting to, okay? And again, there's a PDF that says general information about the test, and there's tons of information in there. That's one of the pages in there. All right, we're going to dive right in. So chapter C is in your textbook, but it is an appendix, okay? It's all the way at the end if you access your ebook, which I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. And it is called the Cartesian plane, okay? A Cartesian plane is another word for coordinate grid, okay? It's just your XY axis. So we start really basic. So this is a coordinate plane or rectangular coordinate system. It can ask you to put it on any of those words, and you'd have to know they're all the same things. As a reminder, the horizontal is your x-axis. The vertical is your y-axis. The point where they meet is called the origin. And they go numerically, start in the top right, and they go counterclockwise. So quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4 are on the bottom. We're going to plot some points. Plot them and identify the quadrant. So x obviously comes first, y comes second. Go ahead and plot them all. Label them, and then next to it, identify the quadrant. All right, so A is right 2, up 3. What quadrant would that be in? Good. Quadrant 1. B, negative 2, 3, left 2, up 3. Quadrant 2. 2/3, negative 3. Obviously, you don't have to measure that line and divide it by 3 and get it perfect, but somewhere between the 1/2 mark and the 2 and the 1 mark. Negative 3, and that would fall where? 4. 0, 3. What quadrant is that? Trick question, right? It falls between two. It actually falls on the y-axis, so we write y-axis. Negative 3, 0 is x-axis. Good. And 0, 0. What's it called? Origin. Good. Feeling pretty good right now. Like, whew, I'm super smart. Yeah, that's not a test question. Don't get used to it. All right, example 2 says determine which quadrants satisfy the given information. Number 1 says x is greater than 0 and y is less than 0. So if you want to give yourself the visual, right, I have my quadrants. Go with just the first part. Where or which quadrants would have x's that are greater than 0? Good. The right-hand side of this are quadrant 1 and 4. How about which quadrants would have y less than 0? 3 and for the bottom. Good. So this, because it's an and not an or, I need it where it overlaps, which is only in quadrant 4. 4 is also 1v, because sometimes your book or your WebAssign will use Roman numerals. 2, x times y is less than 0. What kind of number is less than 0? A negative. So how does a product result in a negative number? What has to be true? Good. One's got to be positive, one's got to be negative. So where does that happen? Good. Quadrant 2, the x is negative, the y is positive. And quadrant 4, the x is positive and the y is negative. Questions on those? All right, scatter plot. So this is another thing that's heavy AP. They like to do a lot of data and a lot of charts of data and then trying to figure out if it's linear, if it's quadratic, if it's all these things. So we're going to kind of baby step our way into there. This is a scatter plot. A scatter plot uses the information from a table to graph. All those little dots came from a table. So if this was from an actual table, the x values are going to come from the left side of the column. So these would have been the hours of study. And the right side is the y, which would be, in this case, the test scores. You will see these charts vertical and you will see these charts horizontal. In that case, the x is on top, the y is on the bottom. So a lot of the graphs will ask you to make an inference about it. Like, what can you determine from this data? What's happening with this information? Okay, how do I put that into words? What's the correlation between the hours of study and the test scores?
The more hours you study, the higher test scores.
Good. So from this, we can infer that the hours of study increase, or as the hours of study increase, the test scores also increase. So you're looking for words like increase, decrease, okay? And you're looking for specific to the subject. So I would say something like as the number of hours of study increase, the test scores increase. You cannot say it increases. Those will not earn you the points, okay? You have to be descriptive to the actual data that's there. You could even push this further and say what happens at the end. Starts to level off, right? Which you guys, anybody it's still studying at 3 a.m. knows you're not doing any good anymore, right? Okay. Sometimes too much is just as bad. Questions? Okay, so a couple things about the chart, because you're going to have to build them from scratch. Notice that you have to go in even increments. So on the bottom, you're going by 5s. On the x-axis. On the y, you're going by 10s. Those don't have to be the same, okay? But along the axes have to be the same. You have to label your axis and then obviously do your best to plot the points exactly where they're supposed to go. So you are going to be building graphs from scratch, labeling them, and then coming up with your own increments, okay? They don't have to be the same as everybody else's, but they do have to be consistent. All right. Use the given information to graph a scatter plot. So draw it out, label your axes, plot your points. All right, so it should look something like this. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect because you're making it on your own as long as you're consistent. Your x-axis is the chapter, the y-axis is the class test averages, okay? And then we started up at like 787, went down a little bit, came up a little bit, but came back down again. So if you were to infer something about this data, what would you say? Okay, so in general, maybe the chapters got harder. Specific to the data, I could say as the chapter increase, or as the chapter number increases, the test scores decrease, okay? There's a lot of factors that could be going on here. Like if a dip around the third chapter, maybe the third chapter's really hard, maybe that's homecoming week. Like there's obviously those kind of things that may be causing a change in the data that you wouldn't be specifically deciding. You would just say something overall, like as the chapters increase, the test scores decrease, okay? That would be your overall assumption. Questions on any of those? All right, 2 formulas that hopefully you have seen before, but as a refresher, that you need to know are distance and midpoints. The distance is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And the midpoint, x1 plus x2 over 2 and y1 plus y2 over 2. There is no reference sheet on your AP exam. It's not like they give you formulas. It doesn't happen. All right, so this one just says find the distance and midpoint using the given point. So we're literally just going to find both. I'll do A with you and then you'll do B. So A, my distance, and it doesn't matter which ones I make the 1s and the 2s as long as I'm consistent. So if this is x1, this has to be y1. I could have made it x2 and y2. And then this would be x2, y2. So square root of 4 minus a negative 3 squared plus 2 minus 2 squared. Minus the negative becomes plus, and I get the square root of 7 squared plus 0 squared, square root 49, which goes back to 7. If it's a square root, it has to be simplified. So one of the things we kind of like, I kept talking to Miss Ferrier over the summer every time that they would release information, and I was like, did you know that this? Calc, AP Calc, you don't have to simplify things. You could leave it as square root 20. Pre-calc, you have to simplify things. You have to change that to 2 root 5. So anytime you write a fraction or square root, anything that can be simplified in here, you have to make sure it's simplified. All right, midpoint. So I'm going to add the 2 x's, divide by 2, and add the 2 y's, divide by 2. I get 1/2, 4 over 2, so 1/2 and 2. If it's multiple choice, obviously you would see it written as the 1/2. If it's not multiple choice, 0.5 is also acceptable. You just can't do that with something that would round. So if it was like 1/3, you cannot say 0.3. You cannot round it. Only if it's exact can you use either. All right, you do B. All right, so you should have gotten square root 10 for distance, and then the midpoint, negative 3/2 and 7/2. Raise your hand if you got it right. Good. Questions? Okay, so again, I want to, if it's a square root 20, I want you to break it down into, you do your factor trees if you need to, whatever. But you need to make sure you're rewriting everything that can be simplified. If you know you are rough at like simplifying radicals, there at the very top of the module in chapter 1, there's a page that says all the things, like chapter 1 prerequisite skills. And it literally has videos and tutorials and extra practice worksheets on every skill I assume you already know. Okay, they're all there. So if you know that you have a gap in that space, you got to know yourself well enough that that's where I need some extra practice, and then you got to push yourself to go get it. Okay, and then obviously you can ask for help. But those basic skills we won't review. You just got to make sure that if you need the review, you're going back, and that, again, top of the module, there's a whole page of that stuff. All right, so how do we apply the distance formula and the midpoint? And it is in a way like this. This is to verify type of polygons. So you'll see something where it will give you the coordinate points, and it will say verify that these coordinate points form a right triangle, or an isosceles triangle, or an equilateral triangle. Okay, a right triangle, you can do this by doing a squared plus b squared equals c squared, or you could even find the slopes and show that they're perpendicular. So there's two ways to do it. But by distance, it would be by showing a squared plus b squared equals c squared. For isosceles, you would be showing that two sides have the same length, and for equilateral, you'd be showing that all three sides are equal. Okay. So an example, it says use coordinates, and that is a 6, not a B. This is a 6. This font is cute, but weird. Okay. A, the coordinate point is 6, 3. B, the coordinate point is 6, 0. And C, the coordinate point is 2, 0. You do not have to graph it unless it explicitly states for you to graph it. But it might be beneficial to graph it, especially if there are vertical or horizontal components to your graph. Then it would help you to know where those points are. So like if I were to graph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, this is A. 6, 0 is B, and 2, 0 is C. So by graphing it, I know I can already determine the lengths of two of those sides. So from C to B, I went from 2 to 6. The length is 4. From B to A, I went 0 to 3. That side is 3. Now all I have to do is find AC. And for that, I do the distance formula. So I'm distance formula for AC. Square root of 2 minus 6 squared plus 0 minus 3 squared. And I get 16 plus 9, square root 25, and that's 5. Now, if you remember your triples, you would know 3, 4, 5 is one of them, okay? To verify, you're going to work it out. I'm going to say a squared plus b squared, show that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. How do I know which one is A, B, and C? Good. C is the longest or the hypotenuse. A and B don't matter. So I can make this 3 squared plus 4 squared or 4 squared plus 3 squared. It doesn't matter. But 5 has to be the C. And 9 plus 16 shows me that this is a right triangle. So if it says show that or verify, the work is your proof. Simply drawing it is not enough information. Again, you could have also used the slope, but we're going to talk about slope in the next section. So you could have also used the slope. If they're vertical and horizontal, they are perpendicular. That helps. But your book pretends you don't know that yet, so we're using distance. On the quiz, however, it's going to ask you to find the length of all three sides and then classify it. So you're going to have to find the lengths of all three sides anyways. Might as well practice that distance formula. If they were all equal, it'd be equilateral. If two were the same, it'd be isosceles. And if a squared plus b squared equals c squared, then it's a right triangle. Those would be the three ways you can classify it based on its sides. Questions? All right, last thing in this section that hopefully you remember, but if not, here's your refresher, is the standard form of a circle. So the standard form equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, where hk is your center and your radius is r. And you'll see this a couple different ways. One is it'll give you the center and the radius. You just plug it in to find the equation. One is here's the equation. Give me the center and the radius. And God bless you. And the other, which you'll see in a second, is here's the center and a point on the circle. Give me the equation. If we're plugging the HK in, remember it changes the sign. So if my H is positive 2, then this becomes x minus 2. If my H is negative 2, then that would become x plus 2. Because the initial equation is minus, so it would change the sign. And vice versa. If I have the equation, if it said x minus 2 squared, then I would know the H is positive 2. It always changes sign. In the equation, the radius is squared. So if I have the equation and I'm finding the radius, I'm going to square root it. If I have the radius and I'm finding the equation, I'm going to square it. All right, so first kinds of questions. Oh, wait. Okay, so just ignore my notes. All right, find the equation of a circle that passes through 3, 4 with a center of negative 2, 1. So my standard form would be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. From what I'm given, what do I already know? This is my x, this is my y, this is my h, this is my k. Good. The center is the HK. The coordinate point is your x, y. You cannot switch those. It will mess it up.
Do you have to switch the sign of the x and y?
When you plug it in. No. When you plug it in the x and y, no. The HK, yes. So I'm going to plug the x in as x. So this is 3. I'm going to plug the h in. It's minus a negative 2. So that's going to change it back to positive. Squared plus y, which is 4, minus k, which is 1, squared, equals r squared. That's the only thing I don't know. So this becomes plus, and I get 5 squared plus 3 squared equals r squared. 25 plus 9 equals r squared, and r squared is 34. With me so far? So if it had asked for the radius, then I would say r is the square root of 34 because I'd have to square root it. But if it's just asking for the equation like it is this time, then I can get x minus my h, which was negative 2, so this is going to become plus 2, squared, plus y minus my k, which is 1, squared, equals r squared, which is 34. Yeah, but wait, just give me 2 minutes because I'm gonna collect some data from you guys. Questions on where we're at right now? Homework is a PDF. I'll publish it in a second. But one of the things it says to do is create a scatter plot based on the data collected in class. So you guys are gonna be my data, okay? I'm gonna ask you if you have 1 sibling, 2 siblings, more than 2 siblings, or no siblings, okay? One year somebody's like, do I count as a sibling? No. Nope, you don't count as a sibling. You're you, okay? So a sibling means anything. Half sibling, step sibling, I don't care. Families are complicated. Think right now, how many people do you call brother or sister in your family? That's a sibling, okay? All right, so I'm going to say no siblings first. How many of you are only children and you don't have any siblings? 1, 2. How many of you have 1 sibling? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. How many of you have 2 siblings? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And how many of you have more than 2? 3 or more. Oops. Siblings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. You need to take a photograph of what's on the board because this is what you're going to make a scatter plot from. So it says in the instructions of the homework, it says complete the PDF, and there's a PDF there. And then it says use the data collected in class to create a scatter plot. So this was number of siblings, and this was number of students. So this actually, the number of students should be your y-axis, the number of siblings should be your x-axis, okay?